Hello, Collateral Gaming listeners. Chazzle Dazzle here from the Trial by Error Variety Show podcast. I just wanted to take a few seconds to invite you guys over to what we do. No, it's not video games, but we do invite really awesome and unique bands from all over the world. We dig deep into their souls and find really cool stories to tell you, and there's tons of music every week, so subscribe to us wherever you subscribe to your podcast. We look forward to having you.
I'm Ashley Chancellor.
I'm Zachary Gio.
And I'm Megan Gomez.
This is Collateral Gaming. Welcome to Season 3 of Collateral Gaming, the only video game podcast that matters, where we focus on good games, bad games, and everything else in between in the world of gaming. We are podcasting straight from somewhere in South Texas, and yes, my friends, we are a 420 friendly podcast, so whatever you have, smoke it if you've got it. And guys, it is officially, like I said before, Season 3. This is our season premiere. I'm so stoked.
Yeah, man, we got some really good stuff to talk about today.
My second season with the podcast. I'm so excited. Welcome back, everybody.
Hell yeah. We really didn't even take a break from Season 2. I mean, we were kind of behind on things, so we're just going from one thing right to another, but it's okay. We're here for it. We have so many great games that we're going to talk about this season. We all got a chance to go ahead and pick a couple games in advance. And, last season we managed to pick up some new cast members along the way.
Yay!
Yeah, man, it's good to be here.
Yeah. I'm waiting for another female, but I'm glad to be a female in the podcast world, and I'm glad to be talking about gaming. I'm so excited for this season.
Well, it's okay. Just having a female on our podcast will bring our views up.
It's female? Brr.
Girls play games? What?
I know. I was thinking before this whole pandemic started, I was like, man, we really need to take some promo shots with Megan in the shot so people want to see the podcast. A girl?
I cosplay too. If you need me to wear a cosplay, I'll wear a cosplay. I don't give a shit.
Hey.
Yeah, I'm going to be Kratos for Halloween next year if I can.
Oh, fuck yeah, dude. That is badass.
I'm hoping that I can pull it off because I'll get the body paint, I'll get the fake tattoos, and I'll get the axe, but I just got to get the body right.
Oh, you got to do the bald cap too, because remember, he's bald.
Oh, no, I'll shave my head. I'll shave my head because I can do the beard. I just got to I got to lose the noggin fur.
Boy.
As cool as it is, I kind of want to be Freya from God of War, just because she has long dark brown hair and I can do all the braids, and it's literally the same length, we have the same hair, so I've been thinking about it for a while.
That would be awesome. That would be sick, actually.
That would be sick. Goodness. I don't even know what I want to do. Someone with long hair and a beard. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of. I could do Fat Thor. I've been talking about it ever since Endgame came out, but I kind of figured everybody was doing Fat Thor, but I actually look like Fat Thor, okay?
Also, I guess that's a little bit of a news segment. I guess a lot of the cons are canceling. I know me personally, I go to, cons every year. I really eventually want to get to a place where, the podcast is actually present at a booth at a con, because I feel like that's a lot of good exposure. Plus you get to meet everybody that listens to you, so that's dope. But yeah, that's a little bit of a sad thing, is a bunch of them got canceled this year, so I'm sad.
Wah, wah.
We could definitely do a God of War squad, though. We just have to kidnap a little 13-year-old boy and force him to be Atreus. But that's.
I don't know, who would Alan be? I don't even know.
I don't know.
Boy.
We could. Boy.
Boy.
Go back to last season.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody remembers that episode, but we couldn't stop saying it, especially in the group chat.
We couldn't. It was great. Speaking of which, I mean, we had a really awesome Season 2. We did our season finale, and we got to kind of have a retrospective on Season 2 already, what Dakota and I did. But what did you think about what were some of your favorite episodes last season, Megan?
Oh God, definitely God of War. Speaking on that, just because I've been a Kratos fan since the beginning. He's such an epic, and not trying to stereotype this, but he's such a beautiful character in his darkness and his, you know, depth. I've always loved his story and his archetype. Also, I did really love the one that we did on Lara Croft, because, you know, I love Lara Croft. I think, you know, especially the most recent movie that came out tying to it, you know, very big, you know, women empowerment, you know, not trying to be all, you know, like, oh, but, you know, I think it's great that, you know, they're creating a type of gaming that, you know, is geared towards women, you know, as well. Let's see, dang. I love the Spyro one, just because, you know, we did get to delve a little bit into, you know, childhood, bringing back those memories, you know, of playing on the old platforms and stuff. And, yeah, I mean, there's so many, you know, like, moments in the season that I was just so excited about, you know, just even being able to be on the podcast for me personally was, you know, so awesome. I don't even know what would be like my absolute favorite, if I'm being completely honest with you. I have no idea.
I don't blame you. We had a lot of great games, and y'all started out on you and Alan had started out on Star Wars Fallen Order. That was awesome.
Yes, that was fun for me, especially, you know, I hadn't really watched too much of the series or been too involved, and that was right around, you know, the first season of The Mandalorian, so it was just like bringing a lot of this in for me. And my dad is older, but, you know, he was so invested in the Star Wars series when he was younger, so it's cool to be able to, like, bring that into the next generation and, like, you know, be able to talk about something that's still so massive. It's so cool. I'm so excited. I'm so blessed that I get to do another season, because I'm so excited about the podcast. I love talking about the podcast.
Fuck yeah, me too. And Zach, I mean, you've been the same way. I mean, you, right? I mean, I've heard you, like, you and I, we're always talking about it, and you're always like, I'm so excited.
Oh, dude, every single time I get ready to record with you guys, I'm like a little kid at Christmas opening up his presents. I'm like, oh, we get to do this. And I mean, the first episode you and I did was diving into the Metroid Prime trilogy, which is one of my favorite trilogies of all time. Like, Metroid is one of my favorite series.
I'm excited to do that one.
It was fantastic. And I mean, Ash, it wasn't just like, it was the Facebook post that you made that made me really excited to just talk to you about this. And it led to us recording our first episode, which led to me being on the podcast with you. And it is just these little things that just like connect the dots in life that kind of bring us together to talk about these things are amazing. I mean, just last week, we dove into our top 5 items in the Zelda series, and we whipped into Skyward Sword. We had hours of content to talk about in just a limited amount of time.
Dude.
Really spectacular. I'm thrilled to continue the journey with you guys. This has been a blast. I can't wait to build my PC soon, so I'll have like a really awesome setup and a much better mic.
I'm on a low-qual headset as well, but also, you know, speaking on Alan's behalf, you know, he's not going to be on this episode. He wasn't able to play Majora's Mask as a child, unfortunately. He only did stuff on the SNES. So he got to play Ocarina of Time, but that's really all the Zelda knowledge that he has. But Alan's really excited for Season 3, guys. He's so stoked. He's always been a social gamer, so I think this is something new for him. It's something fun, you know, to kind of spice up the new marriage a little bit, is get get to dive into stuff like this. And he's really excited for Season 3. We're talking about building a gaming PC as well, because we really want to stream for you guys. I've heard that, you know, especially from Ash, that my commentary is really funny whenever I play, because I just get so into it that I just start. So we're really excited to, you know, hopefully be getting into streaming soon, getting into, you know, y'all seeing us in person instead of just hearing our dumbass voices.
I mean, go ahead.
No, go ahead, bro.
There's no other way to do it when you're streaming and when you're diving into video games. There's nothing else to do but to give it your all, to fully enjoy it to the best you can, you know. And this I'm excited to start doing that as well. I just need a better internet setup, and of course to build my computer, and then it's bombs away. We're gonna get started.
Bombs away.
Doing a whole setup, you know, having a whole room. You know, Alan and I are looking into buying a house in the future. So we want to have, you know, a setup for that, definitely. And also, I mean, Alan is so hilarious when he's social gaming, guys. Like, I don't think I can talk about this enough. Like, he just starts randomly screaming and making the most random noises you've ever heard in your life. Or he's just like, my grave, and he's just like crying and like laughing at himself, and it's the most hilarious thing. Like, I want our podcast subscribers to see this, because it's friggin' hilarious. Like, I've never seen anything like it in my life.
No, seriously, guys. Yeah, y'all really need to get set up with streaming, or maybe even some of our Patreon exclusive Let's Plays, because that's perfect for social gaming. And I'll extend another branch too, is our bonus round episodes. Something else I want to talk about here in a second, but our bonus round episodes are also a great opportunity to talk about, you know, because our regular episodes aren't really geared towards social type games, it seems like. But if like the bonus round is perfect for that, that's something else that we started last season, in which runs analogous to Collateral Cinema's director's cut, and it's been really awesome to have Zach on those episodes. He and I mean, he's pretty much taken over the role of doing the bonus rounds with me, because it's been real. I love the attitude that y'all both have, by the way. I wanted to mention that. Like, it is so awesome to have other people that are just as excited about this podcast as I am. But what's really cool about Zach is I can always be like, yo, do you want to just like spontaneously? And that's what bonus round's supposed to be, is, hey, do you want to just talk about this?
Yes, I do.
And it's been great to just be able to just get it done, So, and unfortunately, we don't have Dakota with us anymore. He's kind of doing his own thing right now, and hopefully we'll have him on as kind of a recurring guest on certain episodes that he wants to be on. I'll always offer it out to him, let him know, hey bro, like, we got this game coming out, because a lot of the games that we developed together, was stuff that we developed from the very first season. We talked about that in our season finale on Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. That was pretty much the last game that Dakota and I had originally designed together when we first planned out Collateral Gaming, and season 1 ended up being split into season 1 and season 2 when we went monthly. So up until season 2, it's all been what was basically pre-planned, but now we're venturing into new territory. That's what's exciting about this new season, is that we all got to pick new games that we wanted to do, and it's all things that I mean, technically Majora's Mask is something I'd always planned as the season premiere for season 2, which then eventually became season 3. But other than that, I mean, everything is completely new. It is new content that we had decided, after having already talked, about games thus far. But I guess we will have a chance to kind of talk about what's upcoming in season 3 later at the end of this podcast.
Already, I'm so excited. You have no idea. My favorite game of absolute time, and if y'all have listened to any of the episodes, you already know what it is. We're going to be doing this season. Just a little hint there, and y'all are not ready. I'm probably going to fangirl like no tomorrow, but you know what? I'm so okay with it. I cannot wait.
Yeah. No, I'm excited about that one too, and I know exactly what you're talking about. But we have a little segment that we started last season. It's called Collateral Gaming News. Actually, no, we did it in our first season as well, but it became like a kind of a series mainstay last season. So this is kind of where we like to talk about news in the world of gaming. So what did y'all guys come up with in our little research session?
I got some tea to spill, honey. So you go ahead. I got the boiling tea.
There we go. Okay, so my little bit of information that I'm super excited about. I've always been on it. I started playing Call of Duty back in 2011 when Black Ops 2 was big on the scene, or when it was about to come out. And Cold War comes out on November 13th, 2020. And Ash and I got a little bit of time to have some fun and smack some children on the beta, and it was it was so much fun just diving into the old style of Call of Duty that they're trying to bring back, and I absolutely love that. This is like a prequel to Black Ops 1, which is arguably one of my favorites, if not one of the best games that the Call of Duty franchise has released. The multiplayer is new, but also classic in the style at which they're bringing it back on the table. The zombies is coming back because Treyarch is bringing it back.
Yeah.
Oh man, the zombies looks absolutely amazing, and apparently in this new game you can win. You can call evac and win a round of zombies, and that is super exciting. They're bringing in multiplayer kill streaks to zombies, like a chopper gunner, and it just looks like it's going to be a spectacular game, and I can't wait, which is something I have not said about Call of Duty in a very long time, because when Ghost came out, it was just like a snowball going downhill. And they're kind of bringing it back to life. So I'm very excited about that.
I know, speaking on Alan's behalf, because he's not in this episode, I know he is super excited. He's been playing the beta. I'm very, very stoked for it. I just started playing, COD recently. I know a lot of people are going to be like, how dare you? I wasn't big on social gaming. Did not have an Xbox until I, was an adult and everything. So I kind of started playing the storylines, kind of stuff that I knew first. But I'm really, really excited for this new one. I personally was not really a fan of the last game, the one that's currently out. I personally had a lot of issues with it. It took me over a year to play the game because my Xbox would just constantly have issues with it. My first game, level 1, dropped in with a level 150, got killed 23 times in a matter of 2 minutes, so I was not happy. So I'm really excited. It seems like they're kind of slowing down and bringing more of a dynamic to the multiplayer in the new COD. Also, it's Cold War. How amazing is that? You know, like definitely there's a lot of things that they could bring into the game. You know, I love that they're, you know, especially delving into the history of our world with this franchise, you know, and kind of bringing, you know, a little bit of a side story, you know, maybe that could have happened, you know. I think that's awesome as well. And also, personally, I'm, as everybody knows in the podcast, I am a big graphics junkie, and the graphics are so aesthetically pleasing. I can't wait to see how they're going to integrate that into the new consoles. That's going to be stunning. I am so excited for that.
Oh yeah, 100%. And honestly, you know, when history kind of takes its course, you kind of realize that the Cold War was more battle of words instead of actual combat. But this kind of, it's not gameplay related at all, but it kind of has an Assassin's Creed feel, because Assassin's Creed takes historical events that have happened and kind of shows you what really happened behind the scenes. And this game kind of does that too. It kind of shows the combat behind the Cold War. And I'm really excited to see how they play the history into it, while also bringing back characters like Frank Woods back into the scene, because Black Ops 1 and Black Ops 2 were beautiful games, and those characters stuck with me forever, even though Black Ops 3 and Black Ops 4 were garbage. When it comes to story, the multiplayers were fun.
Prophet is Bay for me. Like, ready to bring the lightning. Love him. Favorite. Use him every time.
Short circuiting.
Yeah, I've actually been having a lot of fun, and I'm not much of a social gamer. I don't play a lot of competitive multiplayer games, but I actually have been having a blast doing the Call of Duty Cold War with you, Zach. I mean, the beta has been a lot of fun, and I'm trash at it, but I still have fun with it. I kind of finally got into some of battle royale gaming like Apex and on Warzone, so that's been a lot of fun. One thing that I wanted to bring up too, as far as the news segment goes, and speaking of multiplayer gaming, is Ghost of Tsushima recently released their multiplayer mode, Ghost of Tsushima Legends, that came out just this month on October 16th. What's really cool about this is that you're going to be able to choose from 4 classes, including the Samurai, Hunter, Ronin, or Assassin. And let me tell you, I've been playing the hell out of Ghost of Tsushima. It is an awesome game. I love it. I'm falling in love with it. I definitely think it's going to be Game of the Year. I really think it's between that and Cyberpunk, depending on how good Cyberpunk is.
I think Cyberpunk's going to take it out of the water.
It really could. It has that opportunity, but Ghost of Tsushima's definitely got a running chance. I would have liked to have seen Last of Us Part 2, but the game is so divisive. I don't think it's going to make Game of the Year, but I love it. But anyway, yeah, the Ghost of Tsushima, I haven't got to try out the multiplayer mode yet, but I love the game so far and how much I have played of the story, and I'm going to be playing a lot of it more later, hint, hint. But the Legends mode looks really, really cool, and I can't wait to try that out.
Yeah, tying back into the COD thing, I know also we're still, facing the COVID-19 pandemic. I think that's something that's awesome that they're doing with this new COD is being able to have, this kind of sense of community while we're all apart. Being able to, I know especially for my husband, Alan, who's also, on this podcast, he gets to, sit around, he plays with his friends, gets to have, that kind of sense of like a retro kind of like waiting for the multiplayer weekends, having these cool little trick or treats with the new Warzone, the Halloween, I guess, edition. I don't know what I would call it. But they're doing, that's also kind of a little bit of a news bit is, during this month, they are doing the trick or treat. You get to play as a zombie instead of going to the gulag in one of the modes. I think that it's really cool that they're bringing community together, in such a difficult time, especially, with all of the craziness that's going on. It's cool that everybody gets to play with their friends and do new fun stuff, and that they're also going to be integrating this into the new game. I think it's going to be cool to see how the two styles of the two games mesh together. I think that's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it's spectacular. They're calling it The Haunting in Verdansk, and they're bringing just a really cool layer of Halloween spookiness to the overall game. They added a playlist. It's like Halloween Party or something like that. But in most game modes now, the objective is made up of a skull, and the player in first place has a jack-o'-lantern on their head. So it's really cool how they're doing.
I saw that.
Speaking of
Also for news, speaking of Assassin's Creed, kind of tying back into Ash a little bit, I did see on a leak
Okay.
that there might be some news about the new Assassin's Creed being feudal Japan or China, which I know it's kind of a little bit, a little bit late for Assassin's Creed, but I'd still be excited to see it. I've personally never played too much of Assassin's Creed. But I kind of, I've explained this in podcast episodes before. I'm kind of one of those where, if a friend is playing it or, if my husband is playing it, I like to sit there and watch the gameplay. That's a big thing for me, especially, PewDiePie's been on YouTube for how many years now? I definitely started out, watching it and kind of thinking about a review in games because of watching PewDiePie. So that was kind of cool for me, getting to see that, they're going to be doing all that. Maybe that it's going to be in feudal Japan or China. And also, since that's next generation, also, you're going to be able to have customizable faceplates for the new PlayStation, guys. So if you want to have that God of War edition and you don't want to pay the extra money for it, you can get the controller with the customizable faceplates. I've also seen one for Cyberpunk 2077. Haven't seen anything else as far as the leak on the customizable faceplates, but I thought that was a little tidbit that I should add in for my fellow PlayStation players out there. I think that's cool. Instead of just buying an edition, you can kind of be like, not in the God of War mode. Let's slap some Cyberpunk on there. I think that's awesome.
Hell yeah, that I'm actually really excited about that because you always feel like you do miss out when you don't get that special edition, console that comes with your favorite game. I mean, I would have loved to have gotten that Spider-Man PS4. That would have been really really cool, but. I would be really excited about customizing the faceplate on the PS5, and that's really, really awesome news. One thing I also did want to tie into. Oh no, actually, take that back. Assassin's Creed Feudal Japan. I do want to say something about that because I feel like I've been waiting for a Feudal Japan in setting for Assassin's Creed. That has been like the number one. I think a lot of fans are on that same trajectory. Like we've all been wanting the feudal Japan. So hearing that may be actually a possibility is good. Maybe Ubisoft said, "Hey, Ghost of Tsushima actually managed to pull it off pretty well, so we should probably do it." The way I see it, Ghost of Tsushima was kind of that Assassin's Creed in feudal Japan that we always wanted. I mean, it's almost like Ubisoft missed the opportunity to do it, but obviously, with their branding and with the idea of the Animus and fitting into their lore, I'm totally okay with it. I will play an Assassin's Creed set in feudal Japan. Kind of trying to figure out where else they're going to take the series. So eventually, they're just going to have to do it. So, but I also did want to touch on, because you mentioned, obviously we're going through difficult times. We're going through the pandemic. That's why we're still social distancing and why we're Skyping. But speaking of difficult times and also this is, the season. Obviously, we are going through the 2020 election, and regardless of which side that you're on, I think a lot of us agree that this has been a pretty turbulent election. So, in doing so, a lot of celebrities have been out there telling people, to go ahead and vote, and I'm right along with you. Go vote. I mean, it matters more this election than ever before. I don't want to say too much more than that because I don't want to get too political, but one thing that I did admire, like her or hate her, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez went ahead and jumped on and was streaming Among Us, and I think that's pretty cool. I mean, a lot of people obviously are going to say, no, let's keep politics out of video games. I hate that. But I will go ahead and say, this is just my standpoint, I think politicians have a right as much as anyone else to play video games, and they have a right to stream. I feel the same way about celebrities when people say celebrities need to stop talking politics. No, celebrities have a right to express their beliefs too. You know what I mean? So I don't see that there should be any difference. And to her benefit, I didn't watch the stream, but I heard that she really did more just encourage people to vote rather than actually really like set a political agenda to it. So I'm not really going to get here or there about how I feel about AOC or how I don't feel. In fact, I don't even really know how I feel about her, to be completely honest with you. I've heard, kind of both things, but I did actually really think that was cool. And I do see the need to definitely speak to the younger generation, because we are the demographic that is least likely to vote, as statistics show. So reaching out and encouraging young people to vote is actually really, really important, because regardless of who gets voted into office, it's our choice. We're the ones that are going to be dealing with the consequences of that more than anybody, for 8 years from now. So that's our world, and that's the world that we're setting up for our children. So to me, I think it's really important that, we have a voice. I think that we deserve to express that voice more so than some other generations do, if I'm being completely honest. This is our world we're inheriting. So please, go out there and vote. Let it be known. And whatever happens, whoever gets picked, let that be our choice as the American people. It's the American youth.
I definitely agree. Go out there, put in your ballot, whoever you choose. I'm not going to have, a difference with somebody because of who they choose. That's beyond me, But I definitely encourage everybody, if you want to execute the right to choose your future, definitely do it.
Yep,
Hell yeah.
Exactly. People aren't defined by, what they believe, like as far as political views. If you're a good person, that's that. And we shouldn't fight each other just because political views are different. We just need to stand together and make it better no matter what the outcome.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Did y'all have any more news to add on?
I think that pretty much wraps up our news segment there. So
I was super hyped to talk about Call of Duty, and I did that. So.
Yeah, I think it's about time we actually start talking about Zelda, because I see that we're almost half an hour into this, and we haven't even really brought up Zelda. So let's talk about Zelda. So, what is the Legend of Zelda series to y'all?
Oh,
Okay,
man.
so the world is ending and there's zombies everywhere. I'm just kidding. That's not. The Legend of Zelda is my childhood.
Yeah.
It is what connected me to video games and what gave me a sense of adventure. Just to go out there and explore and find everything that I can. And, even though Link doesn't speak, he's a very positive influence on the world around him. And that honestly pushed me to be a better human being. And yes, I know that can sound sort of sappy, but The Legend of Zelda is just this massive, from linear to open world. It's just this massive adventure that kind of plucks at your heartstrings, and it's something that you can't help but get fully invested in. And that's why I love it more than any other game series. And that's what it is to me,
Absolutely.
So.
I would say the same thing. Zelda was a big influence on my childhood. I remember going out in the yard and playing with my stick horse, saying it was a Epona. That was my childhood. I had a best friend, and I call her little sister, and her sister big sister. I remember being a child and finishing up my homework for the night. We had dinner. We would all finish up, sit down, and we'd watch her play the newest Zelda game. That was our childhood. We'd watch her play Wind Waker. We watched her play Majora's Mask when we asked them to play on the 64 because they had all of the consoles. I remember watching them play, Ocarina of Time and having a save file right before the end just to go run around and play around. I think that, also tying on to your point there, Zach, Link is a very, very positive influence. And, it kind of pushed me to be, a little bit more of an optimist than I think I would be had I not, had myself tied into these games. He's so optimistic, and when he helps somebody, he's just so happy, and he's so, he has his sad moments. There's always, in every character, especially in dynamic video games such as this series, there are going to be, some dark depth moments, but he's all overly positive, and it's a great thing, especially, getting to share this with, friends of mine that have children. They ask me about, how my childhood was, and, I get to say, yeah, I got to play around with Link as a kid, and go ride Epona and, use all the spurs up and, go riding across Hyrule Field and things like that. I think that it was such a big thing in my childhood that it really, shaped me the person that I am today.
Yeah, The Legend of Zelda, hands down, without a doubt, is my favorite video game series of all time. And always will be. It is what legitimately got me to the point where I wanted to have a career in video games. It's what got me to be. I started out with the GameCube. I got Super Smash Brothers. I really enjoyed Spyro Hero's Tale. That was one of the first games I got on it. But man, whenever I bought The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, my entire world changed. Video games became just became my life, okay? And it's why I'm on a video game podcast today, and I can't say that I would be as interested in video games if it hadn't been for Zelda. I remember just getting to Dragon Roost Cavern, the very first dungeon in Wind Waker, and that's fairly early on in the game, obviously, but you do get this sense of just epicness. I remember getting this feeling like I really was this boy who had been thrust away from his home. You know, I'm a million miles from home, and I'm trying to save my sister, and I'm in this fiery dungeon, and I just felt that, and I was just so invested in it, and I couldn't stop playing. And before I knew it, Twilight Princess was already in talks at the time. They'd already announced it was going to come out in a few months, so I smacked onto that pre-order, and I was waiting and waiting for that to come out, and it came out, and I loved it, and I got Phantom Hourglass, and I got Spirit Tracks, and I pre-ordered Skyward Sword, and I was super, super hyped about that, and I got that, and ever since then, every Zelda game that's come out, I have been there at launch or pre-ordered the game. Breath of the Wild being an exception because I wanted to get the Switch edition, and I was waiting to get a Switch to do it. But even though I had a Wii U, I wanted to play it right. But yeah, The Legend of Zelda is like you guys said, an integral part of my childhood, and it's something that I'm excited to be able to play with my daughter. She's only a year old now. I think almost a year and a half. I want to say, yeah. See, because her birthday's in June, so yeah, we're coming up on 18 months. Yeah, that's crazy. I can't even believe it. That is insane to me. Anyway, I'm really excited to start playing Zelda with her, as I once did with my dad, because after I got into the series, I found out that my dad also had grown up with the original Zelda, so we played the original together. And when I remember going back and forth, I would have been in middle school at the time, and we would every time we died, we would switch out, and oh man, it's a hard game, the very first one, but I can't wait to share those experiences with Hazel and be able to show her Zelda.
Alan and I have talked about this. I definitely want to have, kind of like I had in my childhood. Maybe not as much. I definitely, there's hopes and dreams that I have for my future children. But we've talked about, how I definitely want to, delve into the Zelda franchise with my children. I want to show them, how I was as a kid, what I got to see as a child, and what shaped me to be, the mom that I'm going to become, in the future. I'm really, really excited to delve into that with my children one day.
It's a beautiful thing. The series, this is probably one of the most connecting series of all time. Yeah. It really does bring people together who've experienced it. I mean, I went to school for 5 years to study how to play the trumpet. And my professor just one day noticed that I had a Switch in my backpack, and he told me how Ocarina of Time is his favorite game of all time. And he actually invited me to come over to his house and play on the 64 with him. And we got all the way to Jabu Jabu's Belly in one night. Just him and I goofing off, having a beer, playing Zelda. It was fantastic. And I got so much closer to him just because we were exploring as this little kid trying to save the princess. And it was just spectacular, and no other video game has ever been able to do that for me. I mean, yeah, I play Call of Duty almost religiously, and I've gotten into Rocket League recently, but they don't compare. And no other game tugs on your heartstrings. No other game kind of brings you joy and sadness with certain aspects of the story. And it's just something that, hopefully I'll be able to have children one day. And you bet I'm going to try to show them this series. You bet I'm going to try to introduce them. And hopefully at some point, in some capacity, it can inspire them the way it inspired me to just be more joyous, to be more optimistic, and to look at life in a better way.
Yeah.
Just don't tell them to smash doors.
Well, no, that's the best part.
I'm destructive, but I'm also a 13.
So for me, Zelda is already my favorite video game series of all time. So I'm really excited to talk about what is actually my favorite game in the Zelda franchise, along with Breath of the Wild. They're both my favorites. They're tied. I can't tell which one I love more. I love them both for reasons. But we already talked about Breath of the Wild, and early on in our first season of Collateral Gaming. And if you haven't checked that out, go check that out right now. It's available wherever you're listening to this right now. And I'm also doing a Let's Play on it, and I'm slowly finishing that up. Added a couple more episodes on YouTube. That's a Patreon exclusive. So if you want to, give us a little bit of cheddar cheese, then you'll get to check that out. But anyway, we also talked about a bad Zelda game, the Zelda CDI games. That was a fun episode for 420, so make sure to check that out as well. And there's a Let's Play out on Link: The Faces of Evil. But Majora's Mask, okay? Majora's Mask is, again, it is my favorite Zelda game. And the reasons why we're going to get into here, but there is something that, love it or hate it, there is something that is very, very unique about Majora's Mask that no other Zelda game does. And I think that's why it's so interesting to me, and that's why it's rated so highly for me. Just right off the bat, what do you guys think separates Majora's Mask or distinguishes it from the series?
Oh man, I think for me, because it's so different from what we, especially, you know, if the 64 was your first console as a child, you know, you play Ocarina of Time, and then shortly after comes this new Zelda game, you're like, oh my god, is it a continuation? Like, what happens to Ganon? What happens to Zelda? You know, you're like, what happens? And it's such a dark game. It's so intense, and as a child, you're like, what? And also for me, I've had some hard moments in some games, but for me personally, Majora's Mask is the hardest game I've ever played. It is so intense. It's so in depth. There's so many little details that you don't think about until you've messed up. And you just are so involved in this dark story of Termino, which is, you know, the mirror of Hyrule, and just the intense depth of it. It's so astonishing for a game, especially of its time. You know, it was just so like I just keep saying, in depth and intense, because it's just like it's in your face, and it's like, destruction's coming, man. You got to take care of it now. And you're like, oh my god, okay, we're gonna go do it, I guess. Shit.
Yep.
Yeah,
100%. Kind of to piggyback off of that, just other than the graphics, you know, they are a little bit better than Ocarina of Time, just because you know, they had to put in a little bit more work for it. Majora's Mask is a game that is so far ahead of its time. It is just for the crunch time that they had to put this game, it was like, what, less than a year?
Yeah.
This game is just so superb in every aspect. I mean, you're constantly filled with this sense of dread, because you know, I mean, of course you can take your Ocarina and you can reset time whenever you need to, but you have 3 days.
Yeah.
3 days to get this done, or this giant terrifying moon with one of the most horrifying faces that the Nintendo 64 could provide at the time is just waiting to just come and crash into clock. Oh my god, it's amazing. And with everything that you can do, the NPCs are so detailed because everything's running on a schedule. The side quests are just incredibly detailed, and the Bomber's Notebook, and with everything in that game, it's definitely the most advanced and one of the more challenging games I've ever played in my entire life. I can agree with you, Megan. It's one of the most difficult games I've ever played.
Yeah.
And just to be able to do everything in a timely manner. I mean, Ash, you've been working on the 3-day challenge. You know how tough it is.
It is tough.
I cried.
But Majora's Mask turned me off at first. I'm not gonna lie. I was actually originally I was scared of playing it, and my original encounter with Majora's Mask was the Legend of Zelda Collector's Edition disc. That was a kind of a promotional disc that you could get through Nintendo Power or through Nintendo's official website, and it included the Legend of Zelda, Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, Ocarina of Time, and Majora's Mask, and also a demo for the Wind Waker, which actually didn't work on the copy that I had, but I had already played the Wind Waker, so I didn't care. I was apprehensive about Majora's Mask because I knew about it. I knew there was the 3-day time limit, and originally I couldn't get into it because the game doesn't really give you any sense of direction whatsoever. And I mean, there's a sense, but it doesn't really tell you where to go. The game kind of is kind of, am I using the right word here? But laissez-faire. I wonder if I'm using that word correctly.
Laissez-faire?
Laissez-faire, yes.
It's kind of ambiguous in its direction, almost, for me.
No, that has nothing to do. That's something economic. Okay, I'm completely misusing that word. Anyway, me trying to be impressive. Anyway, it's kind of it kind of just lets you explore things and figure out what your next direction is by interacting with NPCs, and that really builds the world. And we'll get into that more in depth in a second here, but not really knowing exactly where to go and also having to deal with that stressful time limit really bugged me. And even the very first moments of the game are really hard. And so the difficulty curve kind of threw me off too. And I think that originally Majora's Mask wasn't as widely regarded as it is today because it's not as accessible as other Zelda games are. And there's a reason for that. And we're going to talk about the development here in just a second. But Majora's Mask was a game that I was turned off from originally because of the lack of accessibility, because of the stressfulness, the anxiety that it causes. But when you really get into it, my God, it's beautiful. And
it is.
It gets so much deeper than any Zelda game has ever gone. The story goes in places and explores just very mature and complex themes. There's numerous fan theories. There's a whole ass creepypasta out, which we are gonna touch on, that recently restarted. It is just embedded in the Zelda community, and there are a lot of people that see Majora's Mask now as they see Ocarina of Time. I mean, you have basically two types of Zelda game players, who either Zelda players that say that Ocarina of Time is the best, or Zelda players that say Majora's Mask is the best.
Yeah.
So, it is something that I may not appeal to every Zelda player, but I think everybody should give it a shot. Of course, we're getting ahead of ourselves. That's kind of more of a final thought. The Majora's Mask is insane, and there is. Oh, I can't wait to get into all of this. But let's start off with the development. All right.
Young Link returns to your N64 in Legend of Zelda, Majora's Mask. Trapped in a strange parallel world where Armageddon looms just 3 days away, Link must recover his stolen ocarina to save this world. Now magical masks transform him into creatures of power, while bold new creatures cross his path, charmed with luck, both good and bad. Legend of Zelda, Majora's Mask for your Nintendo 64. Time is running out.
So obviously we've talked about Nintendo a bunch of times. I don't think that we really need to get into it too far here, but it was developed by Nintendo EAD, which was let me get the acronym real quick. I know I should have had this. Nintendo Entertainment Analysis and Development, okay? And they were behind some of the more well-known Nintendo properties. And I believe that no, that's what they're known as today. So they were formerly the largest software development division inside of Nintendo. We had a lot to talk about that, I believe, in our Mario Kart episode and in the Breath of the Wild episode as well. But Nintendo EAD was the developer. Nintendo was obviously the publisher. So this is all first party. It's all Nintendo. We kind of know this about Nintendo first party games like Zelda and Mario. Obviously, we have our bigwigs in charge of this. Eiji Aonuma and Yoshiaki Koizumi, and also or the directors of the game, and then Shigeru Miyamoto, the king himself, helped produce this.
It's fun to note that the Happy Mask salesman, his character was designed to emulate Shigeru Miyamoto.
Was he really?
It's really cool because you can kind of see similarities in their personalities. If you just watch interviews with Shigeru Miyamoto, he's kind of got that happy yet daunting kind of personality that kind of leaves you in suspense. Yes, exactly. You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you?
Oh my God, I can see that now. And I don't know why I didn't see that before. My God, I love Miyamoto, and I love Aonuma as well. They're both just the kings of the Zelda franchise. You can't talk about a Zelda game and not talk about Aonuma or Miyamoto.
Yeah, for me, Miyamoto as a kid was almost as big as Hayao Miyazaki. For me, Miyazaki is, one of the biggest influences of my childhood. We could go into a whole episode or a whole season on Collateral Cinema just about Miyazaki's movies for me personally. They were a big influence on my childhood, and Miyamoto was also, I remember just talking about how crazy it was that, these two people were so famous, and how, they brought so much inspiration into children and childhood itself. And it's just insane how big he is and how awesome he is and how many of his own Easter eggs of himself he's put into Zelda games. It's kind of insane.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, they are kings. If Miyamoto is basically like the emperor of Nintendo, of all Nintendo first-party games that you love, like Mario, Zelda, Star Fox, he's not too involved with Metroid. Actually, that's the only one that he's not in. Donkey Kong, etc. The Aonuma is like the king of Zelda. He's like Miyamoto's like the emperor, and Aonuma is like the shogun of Zelda. He's been involved in the games, I think, since Ocarina of Time. Yeah. So this was actually his second game, and one thing that I will note here is that Aonuma, or so I've heard, is not particularly proud of Majora's Mask.
Yeah.
As we mentioned before, as Zach mentioned, Majora's Mask was developed in less than a year. So it was originally Ocarina of Time was released on the Nintendo 64, and in order to capitalize on the success of the on the success of Ocarina, I should say, while the Nintendo 64 was still in its life cycle, Nintendo had wanted to release originally. Majora's Mask was actually envisioned as an expansion using the 64 DD, and it was tentatively titled Ura Zelda, which means Ura Zelda means reverse Zelda.
Ooh.
Yeah.
If anybody knows any Naruto, that's like Ura Ringe, the reverse lotus or hidden lotus, Rock Lee's move, or what is it? Wasn't that in Rosario too? Did they call Inner Mocha like Ura Mocha or something? I don't know. I'm going weeb here, but reverse Mocha. But yeah, so originally this was conceived as a 64 DD expansion, and if you don't know about the 64 DD, it wasn't particularly successful. I don't think. I think only there were very few games that were going to make use of it, and it was basically like a 4 megabyte expansion of the Nintendo 64 that would allow some additional things.
That was something I did want to bring up because I personally don't remember. Was it like 2 carts, or because I remember just having the 1 gold cart. Watching Big Sister play it as a kid, and she would just smack it in. And I know that there, like in our talking points, kind of, you were talking about like the expansion pack. I don't remember that. Was it like something that was, I personally, like, I'm trying to envision the 64 and I don't remember that in the back of it.
The expansion pack is something different. The 64 DD was a magnetic disk drive peripheral, and I don't think that it really got much use.
Yeah.
But originally, this was actually going to be basically what would end up becoming Master Quest. That's what Majora's Mask was originally going to be. So if anybody knows about Majora's Mask, and one of the things that you'll notice right away is that it reuses all of the assets from Ocarina of Time. All the character models are in there, a lot of the textures and the soundtracks, and everything is very, very, very similar. And there's an in-story reason for that. But originally, this was just going to be an expansion. And Majora's Mask is unique among Zelda games because in recent history, it's the only one that actually reuses the same game engine and reuses assets, something that Nintendo never, ever, ever likes to do. And I think they should do more. But it wouldn't have happened if it weren't for the development history and how Majora's Mask came about. At some point, Ura Zelda actually ended up becoming Master Quest because the idea was that it would just have altered level designs from Ocarina of Time. Now, somewhere within development, Ura Zelda became Zelda Gaiden, and those two concepts split. Like I said, Ura Zelda became Master Quest. Zelda Gaiden became what is actually Majora's Mask now. And by 1999, we had actually gotten screenshots and details of it that seemed to contain the primary elements of Majora, such as the clock timer and the transformation masks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, y'all. I don't mean to be laughing. It's just Alan left out chips from last night, went to go bite into one and saw it was stale and just put it back in the bowl. So there's a guest appearance from Alan if you hear a crunch in the background, guys.
Yeah, before we started this podcast, you had mentioned about your cat just deciding to go to the bathroom, and that's kind of what I thought was happening.
No, she's actually chilling in her house right now being good. But yeah, no, my husband is making a guest appearance by eating chips, so how's it going? Say hello to
But anywho, like we said, it was developed in 1 year. Eventually, it became its own game, reusing a lot of the character models and other assets, and even the game engine from Ocarina of Time. It was Miyamoto and Koizumi that actually came up with the idea of a 3-day system, and this was done to cut down on game data and development time, but still be able to provide a deep gameplay experience.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting because, like, especially going into now, like, you have, like, timed events where, you have to do something, before the end of the mission or whatever, but I have never seen another game where they have this intense system where you have to finish things in a certain schedule at a certain time. If you don't get all the giants, you're dead. You're screwed.
It was brilliant, because they kind of kept that same feel of open-ended, just vast gameplay while keeping this amount of pressure, which we have that Nintendo usually had to cut corners, which isn't typically done. But when you play the game in depth, it does not feel like that. It just feels like this intense scenario where, yes, there's so much that you can do, but you're limited in the amount of time that you can do it. And a lot of things reset when you play the Song of Time and go back. And there's some stuff that you have to do over again, which kind of makes you question yourself. Okay, how am I going to do this?
Yeah. No, like you said, exactly what I was thinking is that it's brilliant. What they managed to do was not have to produce as much content as they normally would need to for a Zelda game by imposing the 3-day time limit and having players continually reset. You allow players to continue playing and to put more gameplay in, and it doesn't feel artificial. You kind of just more get these Groundhog Day vibes. And what's good is that, once you complete certain sections of the game, that part is saved and you can continue on, and you'll have shortcuts that will allow you to move through things faster, or you can just completely move on to the other section. What you said about cutting corners, the reason I wrote that in the itinerary specifically, and I think this is what gives Majora's Mask the feel that it does, the unique feel. And we kind of touched on this earlier, but there is this more open-ended, challenging gameplay that we don't tend to see in Zelda. Now, don't get me wrong, Zelda definitely has open-world elements and it definitely can be challenging, but this game is even more so, and it's definitely going to be a result of the rush development time. Nintendo didn't have the amount of play testing that they normally do, and the lack of testing seems to have resulted in these more difficult puzzles and scenarios.
Yeah, 100%. And honestly, being a older adult now and going back and playing most of these Zelda games, Zelda really isn't too terribly hard. I mean, if you're playing on hero mode, it's a completely different feel, but the older Zelda games didn't have hero mode, and so mainly they were just focused on story and exploration. The boss fights and stuff, they weren't typically too difficult, but Majora's Mask completely throws all of that out of the window, and it's just ridiculously hard. It's so hard.
I remember having to reread so many pages, because I don't know about y'all, but I know as a kid, especially like GameStop was a staple for us. We always had to buy the book with the game. It was just a thing. And I remember having to reread the pages so many times because I did not understand what the hell was going on. And the book isn't really specific either. It's just like, hey, you should probably do this, but I don't know. Like, no one even knows what this game was. Like, it was so intense and hard. And I remember having to like reread the pages and like, okay, I did this. Should I go back and do this? Does that change this outcome? What do I do? Like we were discussing, a little bit before, we were talking about one of our episodes. It kind of has its almost own butterfly effect, because it's like you watch this thing kind of go backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards, and there's consequences that change with time, and it's like, what the hell is going on?
It can get very confusing very quickly.
It is so confusing. Yeah,
it's a very fresh element to the Zelda series. And as far as piggybacking off of like buying books, Ash and I were talking in a previous episode about how my first Zelda game was The Legend of Zelda: Oracle of Ages, which was a gift given to me alongside a Game Boy Color. And with that game, the woman who gave us the games gave us the book for Oracle of Ages, and it was a dual guide for both ages and seasons about how to get through it and link those games. And even with that book, I still struggled to get through it just because I was a young mind. I couldn't really process how to do this. But when I got Majora's Mask, there was nothing I could really do without referring to a walkthrough or like a guide, because I was like, there's so much happening. One wrong, like you said, with the butterfly effect, one wrong move, one missed conversation, you have to reset and do it all over again. And you have to follow a very specific timeline that's just not present in the other games. And that's what makes this game so unique, is that one wrong move, one wrong pressed button, you're not in West Clocktown at this time, you're gonna miss this person, and you have to start all over again, which if you're speed running or if you're trying to do something quickly, it completely negates that. And so you just set the clocks back.
Yeah, and oh god, there are just so many elements of Majora's Mask that really set it apart. And I forgot what I was gonna say here, but there was something I was gonna say in regards to what y'all had said, and I completely lost it. But I guess I'll probably think about it later. What I wanted to bring up real quick, at least in regards to, as far as development goes, because I really want to get into the meat, into the gameplay, and I feel like that's where we're headed. But this game actually does require, like you said, Megan, the expansion pack. So that's where that comes into play. Is there was the 4 megabyte expansion pack. The only other game that actually required the use of it was Donkey Kong 64. And originally, this actually had to do probably with the fact that this game was originally going to be developed for the 64DD, which had a 4 megabyte RAM requirement. What that does for the game is it does allow for improvements in draw distance, dynamic lighting, texture mapping, animation, frame buffer effects, and number of characters that are displayed on screen. So while this game does use the same engine and feels mostly similar to Ocarina of Time, you might notice some differences in how well that's portrayed, particularly in things like the building interiors being able to be rendered in real time. So they're not set at that fixed 3D display like Ocarina does, and there's less of that fog effect that Ocarina had to rely on.
Especially in Hyrule Castle Town.
Yeah.
It was the most prevalent there. You could just kind of see the grainy film in the background where it was there, but it just looked like it was off in the distance. And when you ran to that area, Link kind of was a little bit more pixelated and harder to see.
And whenever you rolled into something, the entire Clock Town shook. Do you remember that?
See, like I don't think I ever had that issue, and I don't know if maybe it's like the 64 that we had. But what was the expansion pack? Like I personally don't remember this. Was it like something developed later?
Research time.
I know.
Yeah,
like,
research time.
I'm so genuinely like, I don't remember this. Maybe it was just already plugged into the 64. You know, like I don't.
Yeah, let me see here real quick because I never played this on 64. Like I said, I originally played this on the Nintendo GameCube, and then I also have played it. I recently replayed the 64 version on the Virtual Console, and then of course I've played the 3DS version, which we will talk about.
I think this was just sitting in the PlayStation. God, I looked at the name PlayStation and said it. I think this was sitting in the Nintendo the whole time. I don't think we ever removed this. But either that or it was just built in. Because it was a closed compartment. Okay, that closed compartment thing, it was just sitting in there, and I don't think we ever saw that. So I think it was just in the Xbox. God, I cannot think of the console name today. I've said every
It's
console.
okay. I played Majora's Mask on PS2. It's fine.
I honestly don't remember this, but I guess that was something that had happened. That's interesting.
Yeah, it was bundled with Donkey Kong 64, and in Japan it was bundled with Majora's Mask. I'm just looking at it now. Yeah, it increases the Nintendo 64's RAM from 4 megabytes to 8 megabytes, which is pretty impressive at the time because I think my computer is my 2013 MacBook Pro is 8 megabytes of RAM, and a lot of the computers today come situated with that. So for a game console back from 1999, 2000 to have a 8 megabytes of RAM is actually pretty impressive.
Sorely impressive. Yeah. I mean, computers nowadays, people who custom build their PCs run off of like 8 to 16 gigs of RAM. And to think like that's almost thousands of Majora's Masks being able to run at the same time. And I didn't play Majora's Mask until I was able to get it for the Virtual Console for the Wii U. So my first time playing Majora's Mask was like back in 2012, 2013. So when it comes to that game, I'm 8 years. I'm still kind of a baby on it. I didn't play it when it was released. I didn't play it on the 64. But I tell you what, it was still just as challenging being a teenager.
Well, I think also like we still had the old school box TV that was specifically for the 64. It stayed in my best friend's mom's bedroom. That was where the 64 lived. I can like see the room that it's in right now. It's kind of insane. But I just remember like having to hold it because those controllers were so big. Like when you're 5 and your hands are this freaking big, like you have to hold it like so awkward, and it was just so intense playing that as a child, and especially like the cartridge would mess up, you'd have to blow on it even though you weren't supposed to. And, and mind you, like I'm sure that the listeners know, I'm a little bit younger. I'm 22, so it was after I was born. Ocarina of Time came out shortly after I was born, which is insane, and it's one of my favorite games. But I remember like being a kid and going back to that, and it was just so cool, and it was so hard. And I hated the controller because especially the bottom button, the Z button.
Ugh.
Yeah.
I don't even want to talk about it. It was broken half the time. It sucked.
I mean, it's beautiful at the time it came out. I mean, like the Nintendo 64 controller, looking at it now and when the whole system came out, that's probably one of the most innovative designs, and with how Ocarina of Time kind of set the stage for adventure-based 3D games like with Z targeting, and how that specific functionality has been factored into a lot of games today. It's kind of brilliant, but I was 2 years old when the game came out, and so when I was finally old enough to start playing video games, and I had been playing with a GameCube controller and with an Xbox controller, I was like, man, this controller sucks.
I don't have.
Like, we had so many consoles, and in their house. I say we because I basically lived there. Like, I was always playing video games with them. Going from mind you, like I said, I didn't have an Xbox until I was an adult. But going from a PS2 controller to a 64 controller that feels like your freaking size of your head it hurts. It physically hurts. Your thumb gets like numb from having to like go like this and then like mash your hand over to the side and like have to mash it from hiding from Ganon, or going into Clock Town, you're having to like roll away and you're like, fuck.
Yeah, that's definitely part of the challenge of playing those games, is being able to get comfortable with the controls. And I had something I was going to say, because we were talking about people who developed the game, but I think that's kind of next, so we'll get to that. But I'm a huge music nerd, so when we start talking about the music, I'm going to be all over it.
We are just about to.
Yeah.
I want to kind of piggyback off of what y'all said, though, real quick, that I never really got a lot of experience with the Nintendo 64. I never had one in my house. My first console was a GameCube, and my mom didn't let me play video games until, like, she was vehemently anti-video game, did not let me play video games until I was, pretty ways through elementary school. But I would have been 5 years old when Majora's Mask originally came out. So this was me just kind of rediscovering it. But yeah, to get into the music, okay, so this soundtrack was composed primarily by the great, the king of Nintendo soundtracks, Koji Kondo.
Koji Kondo.
He is amazing. Obviously, we've got some reworked themes from Ocarina of Time at play, but what is surprising to me are how many new themes are in this video game. That weren't in Ocarina of Time. I mean, some of my personal favorites are the Song of Healing and the Clock Town theme and the Stone Tower theme. I mean, in terms of, like, for instance, the Song of Healing, it's just beautiful. Every moment that it's used in the game is just a very emotional moment. And the Clock Tower theme, I love how with each day that passes, it gets quicker, and then the pace quickens up, and then even on the last day there's kind of that ominous drone in the background, and the Stone Tower theme is just haunting, especially when you watch some of the binge round Haunted Majora's Mask cartridge stuff. It is just harrowing. What did you think about the music nerd?
Wait, which one? Because we're both music nerds.
That's fair.
Well, honestly, I think that the music in Majora's Mask is brilliantly done. The overworld theme with that snare drum in the background and that super fast-paced, just adventure theme, I love it. It kind of keeps you. Music is one of the most important things in a video game, because, I mean, yes, playing the game itself is fun, but if you're running through a giant open field and nothing is playing in the background, eventually you're gonna nod off or turn the game off, because it's just. The music is some of the most important part. But talking about the Clock Tower theme and how over the course of the 3 days it just kind of gets more intense, and on the third day there's that drone. It's kind of a praise shouted to, like, Ganon's Tower from Ocarina of Time. How when you finally get to the grand staircase, the farther up the staircase you go, the more you hear Ganondorf on the organ, just his theme playing. And honestly, in Majora's Mask, it drags that out, and it increases that sense of dread and anxiety, and you're just, oh my god, I'm closing in on it. It's terrifying, and it's so perfectly done. And I will say the Termina overworld theme is my favorite overworld theme in the entire series, next to the Sky from Skyward Sword, but we're not talking about that game.
Well,
but
it's the Zelda overworld theme, right? Which was oddly enough notably absent from the predecessor, Ocarina of Time. So here it finally makes a return. The Zelda do 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 do, and I love the way that it sounds in this game in Termina Field. And what I really like about a lot of the soundtracks in this game, and this goes with kind of the graphics as well, is that a lot of them are bright and cheery, which is completely juxtaposed with the dark nature of the game. The game is dark for different reasons than, for instance, like Twilight Princess is the other game that's considered kind of dark. It's tonally dark.
That's my favorite.
I know, but Majora's Mask is thematically dark. And there's dark moments, don't get me wrong, but I love how there's bright and cheery graphics and music, but there's this sense of, the moon is crashing. It's the idea that everyone is dying and the mature themes that it deals with.
Have you ever just waited till the end of the 3-day period just to see what would happen?
Yes. And he goes, you've met with a terrible fate, haven't you? That's where that famous line from the creepypasta comes in.
Yeah.
The marimba in the background is so good. I love the overworld theme so much.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're a music nerd too, right, Megan? So what are your thoughts?
I was in choir for a very long time. And music is a big thing for me. I've always been, the type, I don't know if y'all did this as a kid, maybe it was just me, but anytime I played a game that I really, really loved, I bought the soundtrack and it helped me study. It helped me get through college. And on my study playlist, actually, let me pull it up, is the Song of Healing, and it's also my sleep playlist. It does help me really get into a good state of mind. And it's just really such a big song for me. I think it was just because it has so many high points and it reminds me, kind of going into, state and having like my soprano moments in choir, as a soprano 1. It's in my my instrumentals playlist as well.
Come on, tenor 1, yes.
Yeah.
Go. Super high voices. Let's go.
Yes. I don't think I can sing a D anymore, but I could probably try. It was such a big, really big one for me. I'm trying to find my playlist. I'm sorry, guys, that I'm just like, yeah, yep.
I have, in my Apple Music library to this day, it originally was imported into my iTunes library. I have the 25th anniversary soundtrack that came bundled with Skyward Sword.
Mm-hmm.
And that includes a lot of the orchestral arrangements throughout the series. Majora's Mask didn't actually make it into that one, but I think in the 30th anniversary orchestra, they did have a Majora's Mask medley that incorporated a lot of the major themes, like the Clock Tower theme and the Song of Healing and the Deku Palace theme. And there's so many bangers in this game. I mean,
I was kind of infuriated when the 25th anniversary didn't have a Majora's Mask installment, just because that game has some of the most memorable tracks. Oh,
Okay.
nice!
Not even kidding. I know, especially for me, speaking about soundtracks, Zelda was so big for me. Ocarina of Time, I personally favor over Majora's Mask just because, I'm a happy, outgoing person and I loved all the bright colors and, getting to ride everywhere with Epona. It was so fun for me. I remember being a kid and they came to the area once here in South Central Texas, but they had the traveling Zelda orchestra, and I remember just begging my parents for a ticket to go watch the orchestra just to listen to the Song of Healing. That was my favorite from this game, and it was just it's so beautiful to hear it from the orchestra. It's mind-blowing, and it's so pretty. I don't even know how to describe a song besides pretty and airy and light, and it brings a sense of hope into such a dark, intense game.
yes.
It really does. And being able to experience that in a live setting, especially from a group of talented musicians, there is really nothing better than that. And it kind of sticks with you for the rest of your life. Really? And I remember going to see the Symphony of the Goddess in Atlanta. And when they played the Ballad of the Goddess, I cried my eyes
One of my
out.
favorites.
Yeah, I was so happy to be there. And I was just, oh man, it'll stick with me. I will remember that for the rest of my life. So I can imagine how that impacted you, and I'm sort of jealous,
I'm so jealous of both of y'all. I've never been to a live orchestra or symphony of Legend of Zelda, and I love Zelda music. So I definitely have always wanted to go. It is my favorite. Maybe I'm a little biased, but it's my favorite video game soundtrack of all time as well. Incidentally.
Unfortunately, I didn't get to see it. But as I mentioned before, I did go to a lot of cons. As I was younger, I haven't had the chance to go in recent years because I was working, a lot more before I got my current job that I have now. But they do have, in San Japan, here in San Antonio, Texas, they do have, little shorts where they do have part of the symphony that comes out and plays, or they have, people that, volunteer to come play it. And I'm hoping, praying to God that we get to see that in the next couple of cons, because I remember waiting in line and the doors closed, and Big Sister got to go in, we didn't, that
was at San Japan, because I've never seen that at San Japan. and I've been a few years. It's been a while since I've been, but we definitely need to make an appearance. I know that it's canceled this year, but we have to make an appearance next time, and we got to do Comic-Con as well.
I'll fly out there. I will.
Hell yeah, dude.
And especially, I haven't been to, many other cons. I did go to, Comic-Con, and, I did meet Stanley in passing. That was an amazing moment for me.
Oh.
Yeah, I did meet Stanley in passing. Didn't get a picture with him or anything, but I, said, thank you for being such an instrumental part of my childhood, and you're an amazing man, and God bless you.
I'm gonna cry.
Yeah. I don't want to cry because I did see him in person, so that kind of sucked, hearing about his passing.
There's a hero in all of us.
Yeah. But I just cannot wait for San Japan, and I really hope we all get to go because it was a big part of my childhood. I've taken friends' children there, and it's just there's so much Zelda too. I still have photos in my iCloud from seeing the Skull Kid. There was a guy who dressed up as the full with stilts Skull Kid.
Oh, no way.
Dead serious.
I bet that was terrifying,
It was
but
so
also
cool.
awesome.
I was freaking out.
That is cool. Okay, so obviously, before we go on break and record, the second half of what we're gonna do here, I do want to get into the gameplay just a little bit. And I know we're going a little bit over an hour here, but God, we got to talk about the gameplay before we, on this first part. Okay, so gameplay as far as Majora's Mask goes. Obviously, the base gameplay is going to be extremely similar to Ocarina, more so than other games would, are. But the Ocarina gameplay would then afterward come to be the formula of succeeding 3D Zelda titles, including, the Wind Waker and Twilight Princess and even Skyward Sword. It wasn't until Breath of the Wild that they really started to shake things up quite a bit. But you just wrote bagels on the itinerary.
What?
He just wrote bagels on the itinerary, and it popped up in real time for me. But okay, what? Let's hear it from y'all. Okay, what specifically is different about Majora's Mask from Ocarina of Time? There's a lot that's very, very similar, but there's a lot that's very, very different and different from everything else, right?
Well,
besides the big giant fucking moon, I mean.
Yeah, and in Ocarina of Time, Hyrule Field is just this giant open area where you can run and explore, and Lon Lon Ranch is in the middle. But Hyrule Castle is on the far, I guess you would call it the north side.
North side. Mm-hmm.
Northwest, because of where the sun sets and all that. It's on the end, and once you get there, on the other side is the castle, and the right where you meet the first Great Fairy. But in Majora's Mask, Clocktown is in the dead center of the map, and everything, like Stone Tower Temple, oh god, oh no, Zach, don't forget the names of the dungeons. It'll matter later.
Great Bay, Stone Tower, Snowhead, and Woodfall.
Okay, yeah. In my most recent playthrough, I got to Great Bay, but Clocktown is in the dead center, and all of the places that you have to go are at a specific part in the map. And I love being able to traverse these different areas at one specific time, come back, kind of take a breath of fresh air, play that ocarina, reset the days if you have to, and then continue on to the next. I love being able to do a chunk of stuff that you have to do. Like, let's say you go to the Woodfall Palace and you take care of all that stuff, and you do the temple, and you go through the dungeon collecting all the little fairies, and you have to come back and kind of reset yourself. I love that. I love that Clocktown is kind of like a base of operations for you. Yeah. And that's how I've always looked at it. And I love that, it kind of lets you know that certain areas are accessible. Other areas are far too dangerous and you're not ready for that yet, instead of it just being all in one giant condensed area. I love that sense of separation, and it has always been one of the appealing factors of the game to me.
Yeah, I love the geography of Majora's Mask. Someone with OCD, the symmetry of it just really appeals to me. I like how the entire map is basically a compass. You've got Clocktown in the center, you've got Snowhead region up north, Ikana Canyon in the east, Great Bay in the west, and Woodfall region in the south, right? And then you've got Termina Field surrounding the Clocktown, and those different regions that are very geographically different as well. You've got a swamp area, you have a mountain area, you have an ocean area, and you have a canyon area, and they're all thematically different. And I really think that there is a lot of the world building that goes on, because Termina is the setting of Majora's Mask rather than Hyrule. And so it's obviously going to be very, very different. And just within the small portion of this game, they managed to completely build this world for you and show all these different races and areas. And I guess we're kind of getting more into the story segment, which we'll save for later. But I do love the map of Majora's Mask. What about you, Megan? What sticks out to you with Majora?
With Majora, especially because, like as I've mentioned, I'm such a heavy fan of Ocarina. I do agree with you. I do love the symmetry of the map. I also want to piggyback off of Zach. I was going to say the same thing. It's almost like a base of operations. It's the only place that you feel safe while you can figure out what your next step is, while you can kind of plan out what part you want to do next. Which I really enjoyed, especially because me, like, when it comes to games, I'm very much a completionist, and going back into the game, especially after playing games like Mass Effect, games like Final Fantasy. There's points that you want to get to, there's points that you want to finish, so you get everything correct. And I love that I could kind of go back, reset, kind of empty my mind, and get back into the next part. Because this game, like I've said, it's the most difficult game that I've played, just because it makes your head go so many different ways, and you're like, what do I want to do next? And you can kind of go back and get into it. And I love how dynamic every different part of the map is, like you had mentioned. I love that there's diversity throughout the map. It's not just one thing. Like for me, I do love whenever games have different, different territories, different sections, different, areas of terrarium and things. And I don't want to say terrarium, but almost different environments, and it's so intense to kind of be able to go from swamp to mountain to snowy, and it's cool to be able to go through different types of that, especially for a game of the this time. It was huge for its time, like even with Ocarina, it's all set in kind of the same area. Gerudo's a little different, and of course when you go underground and all the caves and all the things like that, and especially in the mountain, it does change a little bit, but it's not as much as this game. So I love how much this game can physically change while still all feeling cohesive and the same, especially for being done in under 1 year. I think it's so amazing how Nintendo was able to pull that off. It was so intense. I keep saying intense for this game, and I feel like that's kind of how it spells itself in my mind. And I just loved how different the gameplay was, because I loved everything about Ocarina. It was positive. There was some sad moments. You had to fight the big ugly fat bad guy. But then you also had Majora, where it was just like this impending sense of doom. You had to do different things. You have the giants. You have this big fucking ugly moon just staring at you
at all times. It's always visible.
Bro. No, and I don't know if y'all noticed this, but if you're running around the map, I don't know if it's later versions, because I did play a later version, the eyes follow you.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh yeah, they do.
I'll imagine that.
And that's one of those terrifying aspects, man. And another way they add dread to the game is, of course, you've got your timer on the bottom, letting you know what time it is, how much time you've got left. But once you get to night or the next morning, everything stops, and the camera zooms out from Link and just stops, and then it gets black and it says the dawn of the first day.
Yes.
It gives you that sense of 72 hours remain, 48 hours remain, 24 hours remain.
Yeah,
and then you're just like, okay,
once you closer, so his big ass ugly grin is just getting and you're like, stop go away. Oh no.
Looks like the Magusta face, kind of.
At that point, you're wondering, this dude's kind of moving in slowly. Is he just gonna tap clock tower and just sit there? But no, if you wait until the end, and it's because I have chosen to sit and wait until the very end just to see what happens when the moon hits Termina.
Yeah.
And it's just this giant, it's like a nuclear blast almost, and it just wipes everything out, and you're immediately sad. And my first thought was, why did I let that happen?
Matt Pet did a whole video on actually why, based on the size of the moon, as we can see, it actually wouldn't have been as catastrophic as it shows in the game. You got to leave it to the game theorists to ruin everything for us, but
you could just say it's magic.
I love his video on the predominant fan theory, which we'll talk about in a second here, or with Link being dead and all that too. But like what you were saying, the 3-day in-game time limit. That's the major takeaway here. Okay, that's what's different here from Ocarina of Time. That's what's different from every other Zelda game or games in general.
I was about to say, this is its own game. I've never seen another game like this where you're timed to do everything.
Not only timed, but time travel mechanics. And there's some games I think like Blink's the Time Sweeper kind of gets into a little bit, and there was that game that came out on Xbox, Quantum something.
Quantum Leap, yeah, it has
Quantum
a
Leap.
kind of. I don't know if we've ever done one on this, but I definitely do hope we do an episode on that game because it's amazing. The mocap on it is stunning, so is the actor himself. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I literally just saw him in SWAT the other day.
He looks like a mixture between Chris Pratt and Michael C. Hall.
He kind of does, yeah. But that game, it changes so much with time, and you have to go back and move forth. And playing that game, it honestly did remind me a little bit of Majora's Mask, just because you're playing so much with time and it's moving and everything is just kind of impending and it's coming at you. But it's nowhere similar to this timed sequence like Majora's Mask is. I've never, and especially being a huge, as y'all know, a huge storyline fan. I'll play a storyline game before I play a social game. Not even sorry. Just now got into No Man's Sky.
Same.
Getting to play all these different games on all these consoles because I have no preference. Gaming is gaming. Getting to play all of these different storyline games, I've never seen something as incredible as a 3-day timeline where it's just this sense of being a hero, but also like saving the world at the same time in its own sense, which is just unfathomable to me. It's incredible.
Yeah, Majora's Mask actually predates all of these, and I haven't seen a game quite go, I think, to the lengths that Majora's Mask does. But maybe I need to play more games. But I don't think a game before Majora ever did this. I think this was the original. Obviously, Ocarina of Time has time travel mechanics, and those really actually do factor in at different points. I like that there's alternate realities and causal loops going on in Ocarina. But the Majora, it's the central mechanic, okay? And I think, like you guys said earlier, it's ahead of its time. It was a game that really implemented that really well. Because not only do you have a time limit, but you have the ability to reverse time and reset the cycle by playing the Song of Time, which, by the way, is the only way to save the game in the original version. And because there are these owl statues around that allow you to save and quit. But once you reload those save files, it deletes them. So they're only temporary saves, and you have to quit the game when you do it. The 3DS version ended up making those save and continues, and I'll talk about how that changes the complete tone of the game later. But that was one thing, is that you planned all the shit you were going to do in one cycle. When you sat down and played Majora's Mask, you were going to sit down and you're going to play a 3-day cycle, and you're going to plan out exactly what you're going to do. And it forces that strategy for the player. Okay, I'm going to accomplish this, 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 and this. Once you get to the point where you open up a temple and open up the warp point, okay, let's go ahead and reset time. Let's give ourselves a whole cycle to do a dungeon. So you have that aspect of the game, and in the Japanese version, by the way, doesn't even have the owl statues, or it has them for warping, but doesn't have the save and quit option. You had to the only way to save in the original version was playing the Song of Time, and it's the only true way to save in the international version. In addition to that, the Song of Time can also be played in reverse to slow down time. Obviously necessary, I think, to really do what you need to do in any cycle. So you play the inverted Song of Time to slow down time to at least half time a third time in the original, half time in Majora's Mask 3D. Another change I'm not as happy with. And then you also can skip forward in time by playing the double Song of Time, kind of taking on what the Sun Song did in Ocarina, but obviously you're skipping ahead. And there are reasons you may want to do this. You think, if we're on a time limit, why would I want to skip ahead? Well, the entire game runs on a schedule. Every NPC in the game, like you guys mentioned earlier, there are certain things that happen at certain times, and you have to remember those things. And God bless the 3DS version for adding a reminder feature. That was a good idea, but you had to kind of write things down and remember things. And so the entire game runs on a schedule. Every NPC does a certain thing at a certain time on a certain day, and it just really adds this aspect to the game. Like the entire game is running on clockwork. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, to
No
kind
pun
of
intended.
Back up of you, I do like that this game is so strategic because Zelda games in general are pretty strategic. You got to plan out how you want to do things in the dungeon, especially if you don't have enough item, space. You do have to plan what items you're going to take with you, what items you're going to use. And I like that this game was really, really strategic. That you had to plan everything. And me personally, I'm a very big strategist. I use lists for everything. I have to plan everything I do. I have certain time. It's part of who I am. And I love that I could just, go in and be like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is what we're going to do today. That's it. and that's it. And then you go and do that, and then you're like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to set the game down. I'm at this time. And I literally had to write a note for myself on the cartridge. I'm at this time on this day, so I remembered where to come back to.
Yeah. Just to clarify, 3 days of time is 72 hours of in-game time, which is about 54 minutes in real time, give or take, uninverted, unslowed down, normal flow. Okay, so you have about say, let's see, 90 minutes to what's 54 times 3? Wait, 90 minutes is not right.
62.
Okay, yeah, you have, 108 to 162 minutes to really get everything that you need to get done within a single cycle. So whether that's completing a dungeon, whether that's completing a side quest, because there is one side quest in particular that takes the entire 3-day cycle, and you have to do it twice to do everything that you have to do in it. You got to get done within that amount of time frame. And so it produces this, like I said earlier, this anxiety, this stress that just isn't in any other Zelda game, or really any game at all. You just constantly feel the pressure and the doom of what's about to happen.
Yeah.
Now, when you reset time using the Song of Time, some things do get to come with you. So any like dungeon items that you've obtained, masks, things like that, those stay with you. What resets though is all of your ammo, like your arrows, bombs, your currency, your rupees, and any items that you have like inside of your empty bottles, which I guess wouldn't be empty, but although you can actually throw your rupees in the bank, and that's essential. If you want to save up rupees, you need to make sure you throw them in the bank before you reset time. And then when you come back, the rupees are there. Don't ask me how, but they are. My personal theory is that the stamp that the banker puts on your head is the exact amount of rupees that are owed in your name, and that's how they remember.
Probably.
Wait a minute, we haven't seen you before. Yes, you have. I just reset time.
Because they'll do that. Let me check. Oh, you're Scruffy, blah, blah, blah. You're Link, and you have this many rupees in the bank. I think they stamp that on you. And that's my headcanon. Because otherwise it doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
Man.
that's what I'm thinking too.
God.
But all progress towards dungeons and the story completely restarts. You start over, dawn of the first day. But there are certain items and events that will allow you to, like I said before, to move forward more quickly. For instance, when you complete a dungeon and you defeat the boss, if you return to that dungeon, you can go fight the boss right away. And that's important because there are certain events that are only going to be available. You will at certain points have to refight bosses. So there's no boss rush mode needed here because at any time you can refight those bosses, and you will need to complete certain side quests. There are certain things that only happen whenever that dungeon area has been completed. So all you have to do is go back to the dungeon, and you can instantly fight the boss once you hold their remains.
Yeah, and once you get we'll talk about the mask of all masks later on.
The mask of all masks. I think that this is a pretty good point to go ahead and cut this in half.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So I'm going to take a little break. I'm going to get a little bit of lunch. This is going to be part 1, and then part 2 is also going to be available. I think I'm going to try to release them back to back since we're a little bit late on our schedule anyway. But normally, the way this is going to work is we're going to be releasing these parts bi-weekly. So this is the point where we're going to go ahead and cut it off. It's something new that we're starting in Season 3. 2-part segments, 2 hours of recording, and I'm really excited about it. So let's get some lunch. Let's get ourselves refreshed. I think my daughter's here, so I'm going to see what's going on with her, and we will recoup.
All right, sounds
Yes,
good.
sir. See you soon.
Uh-huh. Collateral Gaming is an L Company production. All music and game clips are owned by their respective creators and are used for educational purposes only. Please don't sue us. We're poor.